Hello and welcome to Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton. It's the last one of the year. I can't believe it. And as I stroll around a chilly, cold and frankly dark park in London, I've been reflecting on some of the mischief and some of the fun that I've got up to this year. I've been very lucky actually. I've been able to travel all around the world recording Zestology podcasts, having a pretty nice time along the way as well. I'm not going to lie, it was hardly a hardship. And record Zestology podcasts along the way. So I've done this the last couple of years, and funnily enough, not quite sure why, but they've been pretty much the most listened to episodes. So there must be something about this format that you enjoy. And what I decided to do with this one was pick one interview or episode from each month and look at kind of how that kind of tied in with my life and how it went out on Zestology as well. I've been pretty loose with the definition of months as well, but it's my podcast, so I can do that. So in January, I went away for a month, and I travelled kind of all around the world. I started in Seattle, then I went to Tokyo, and then I went to Bali, and then I flew back via Dubai. I was very lucky to do that for the whole month. And along the way, I was trying out a jet lag device called the Human Charger. In Bali, I recorded this excerpt that you're about to hear on my balcony. And it's like one of the most beautiful spots, and I had to record it at this point because the sound effects in the background were so great as well. So you'll hear some impressive sound effects from this January, from me on my balcony in Bali, and also how I found the Human Charger and getting over jet lag, because jet lag is something that can really affect us. And what's interesting about the Human Charger is it doesn't just work for jet lag. In fact, I kind of know the Human Charger people now, and I know they're focusing less on, in terms of their marketing, on jet lag and more in terms of energy and wellness and feeling great. So here you go. This was from January. Well, this is the final part of my Human Charger podcast, and I'm now in Bali, in Ubud, which is kind of in the middle of Bali, and I'm in my hotel room, which is overlooking some rice fields, and it is absolutely stunning by day, kind of green as far as the eye can see, and the sporadic rice kind of worker tending to his crop in the kind of distance, and at night as the sun falls, this kind of cacophony of noise that you can hear now starts up, and it's the kind of, I think it's a fairly standard, tropical kind of cricket sound effect, along with, and I'm not a massive nature expert, so I'm probably going to get this wrong, it sounds like ducks. Can you hear that? Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to concede it's probably not ducks, but it definitely sounds like ducks. Anyway, amazing spot, and I'm loving just being out here tonight, and I'm just enjoying the tropical evenings. About 9:30, it's probably about 26 degrees Celsius. Americans, that's over 80. It's very nice. And it's a great place to have ended up on my travels. Human Chargers still served me well, actually. The jet lag was way less this time around because, in fact, it was only an hour's time difference between Tokyo and here. So use the Human Charger in the evening because, as well as jet lag, it does lots of other things. The moment you put the headphones in, you immediately feel more alert, more awake, and less drowsy. And that's because of the specific type of light that shines into your ear. It also reduces jet lag, and I obviously didn't need that quite so much for this journey because I was pretty much over it by the end of the Tokyo trip. In general, I have to say this is one of the best trips that I've ever dealt with jet lag, especially bearing in mind I've gone right the way around the world, from London to, as you've been listening today, to Seattle, to Tokyo, and then to Bali, and I've dealt with it well. I'm really pleased with it. I think it helps that in London my body clock is set late, so I go to bed late, and in Seattle I was going to bed early, so it didn't quite seem like an 8-hour time difference because I was going to bed a lot earlier. But in general, it's been great, the Human Charger's definitely helped, and I've really enjoyed recording a podcast based on my kind of travels and on the Human Charger, and ending up here in Ubud as well, and getting to experience so many alternative forms of therapy and yoga. I'm going to go and see a guy in the next couple of days who is known simply as Pokemon. I know it sounds a bit weird and possibly a bit dodgy as well, doesn't it? But he is known as Bali's most famous healer. And you have to turn up very early in the morning because he's so popular. And he prods you, he pokes you with a stick. And he pokes you a few times, and after about a minute, he works out exactly what's wrong with you. So he starts poking you, so you have a bad leg, don't you? And the people who go to see him are like, ugh. And at the moment he's diagnosed what your problem is, he then moves down to your feet and picks a spot and presses, and apparently what happens is you feel excruciating pain. And he's kind of using a little bit of reflexology, and then you're rid of the pain. So quite excited about that. Bali's most famous healer, and could be quite intriguing to see what happens. I'll have to let you know in a later edition of the podcast. So that's all good. The food's great here. It's a very peaceful vibe. I mean, it has made me laugh a little bit because, you know, my holidays in the past and fairly recent past and present sometimes, I guess, have involved quite a lot of partying and drinking and so on, and this is just completely different here, but that's really nice too. And at 40 Years of Zen, Dave Asprey said to me, make sure you don't drink any alcohol for 6 weeks after 40 years of Zen. And I was like, how about 3 days, mate? I'm off to meet my mates in Tokyo. But by and large, almost I've kind of stuck to that, and feeling pretty clear-headed and pretty good as a result. It was so warm in January with all those ducks in the background. Not quite sure why I thought they were ducks. Pretty sure they weren't ducks, but frogs. Into February, and a podcast that went out is also recorded in Bali with my friend Meghan Currie. She is a celebrated yoga teacher. She's been on Zestology a few times now. She's great fun, and she has a lot to say. And it's a really inspiring chat.
My own experience, and also having come to see you here as well, where you live, it feels like quite a primal existence. You know, I mean, you know, you're spending almost all your time outside. You've got animals. You're eating great food. It's just kind of going back to the things that matter. Is that a fair assessment?
It is. I've taken time off of the internet. You know, I haven't really been on the social media.
You still post on Instagram stories sometimes.
Oh, the stories. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But for me, that's a little bit different than if being engaged in, you know, the online social media streams as far as posting on my Instagram page, because the stories are very real time. They don't take a lot of time for me to look at the screen. I just
post it.
Do it, post it. That's it. And it's real time.
Don't worry about it. It's just out there.
Yeah. Whereas
it's normally your dogs anyway, isn't it?
It's all it is, because they're the best. And but for the actual posting on, you know, anything else, you have to look at the screen for a while, and that was another thing. Anytime I would look at a computer screen or look at my telephone screen, I got that same feeling in my body. My body just said, no, put it down. This is not a time to be engaging with technology so much as engaging with life around you and your animals and the plants and the people and whatever the moment is bringing into your life. This is the time for you really to just mix into the soup of real-time reality spontaneously right now.
So because we were chatting earlier before we started recording about how it takes a while to unwind, to actually genuinely change that kind of thought process of feeling so stimulated and wanting to check stuff all the time or do stuff. Mm-hmm. How long did it take you, do you reckon?
Like I said when we were kind of talking about that, I mean, I think that really, truly to unwind and to start to disengage with all of the conditioning and the patterns, to truly, truly, truly unwind takes, I would think, much longer time than a few months. But
it's so depressing for everyone who's only got 2 weeks holiday a year or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? I don't think so, because I think that it's not that you have to be on a holiday to disengage. I think it's just to really start to become aware of all the different areas of your life where you are engaging with stuff that doesn't really really feed you, or doesn't really matter, or is the media, or is drama, you know. And I think that's all that really starts to untangle these webs.
What do you mean by drama?
What I mean by drama is any part of this human experience that is feeding something small. So it's feeding something that really doesn't feed your soul, feeding something that in the end generates more toxicity on some level.
Like fear?
Fear, yeah, but sure, and fear is an outcome of drama. So this drama can generate fear, and of course fear can generate drama. Fear is definitely can be a pattern of drama, but also fear can be rooted in something much deeper inside. So, but I don't mean that you disengage with all of your fear, but we all have these areas of our life where maybe we are in a circle with a certain group of people, and when we get together, we talk about something, but it doesn't really feed anything. It just creates more drama or more toxicity or something that doesn't really serve like the highest good.
There you go. That was Meghan Currie on Zestology in February. And on to March in my review of the year, or best bits as I like to call it, which isn't very modest, is it? But kind of all right bits just doesn't sound quite right. So best bits is what I think we'll call it. And in March I spoke to one of the most important people in my life. Not now, I'd say, but in terms of people I've met in the area of healing and personal development and helping me. And that is Asprey, who is a tapping expert. He runs the Energy Therapy Centre in London, and he is an expert in the area of EFT, and if you Google Asprey Mayer, you'll find him. I spoke to him in March. This podcast also had a massive response because it seemed that, I thought kind of tapping might be quite niche for people, and it was certainly niche for me when I first went, even though I had a huge benefit from it. But I have to say that a lot of people got a great deal of help from this podcast. So that's great. Here it is. I know a lot of people listening to this,
yes.
And I know a lot of people when I tell them about tapping are like, what? Someone taps all over your face? So perhaps that's kind of a good place to start.
Yes.
A little bit about the history of tapping or how it works.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that it is a really bizarre concept that you tap on certain points of your body and you are expecting to sort of achieve sort of results in either your physical or your emotional well-being. And tapping's actually been around for a long time. It's been around for sort of more than 4 decades. And I think sort of the initial stages when tapping sort of first emerged in the UK, it really was sort of very out there, and nobody really knew what it was all about, and all the evidence for it was just very sort of anecdotal and sort of lots of stories about sort of people's different recovery stories. And and sometimes those recovery stories, they sound a little bit too good to be true. And you read them, this fantastic, cure-all type of technique, and
I remember reading the one about the woman who had a phobia of water.
Yes,
and then she was tapped in one spot and just and went and ran towards the swimming pool.
Yeah, which you can understand why people would be skeptical. Somebody with a lifelong problem suddenly taps on one spot on her face and problem gone. But it's come a long way since then. And there's a lot more research being done now, both in the UK and certainly in the US. And there's remarkable research now, and it's slow, and it takes time. But I think it's evolving, and in sort of the not too distant future, I think we'll sort of see a lot more of it. What does the tapping involve? So mechanically, what we do, there's 16 points that we tap on in total. Those points are the beginning or the ending points of the energy meridians. And the reason that we tap on those points is because they're just under the surface of the skin. And so you can use just sort of tapping vibrations to get energy into the meridian system.
Like acupuncture,
but obviously in acupuncture you use needles. And generally speaking, the meridians are more sort of deep set in the body, and that's why you use needles. The person who devised this tapping technique, Roger Callahan in the States, his idea, together with a friend who was a kinesiologist, his idea was, let's see if we can access the system, work with it sort of in a psychological and emotional context, but without making it invasive treatment with needles, and that's where they sort of discovered these points. And
so you're tapping on, obviously I know the points now,
yes,
but you're tapping on parts of the face and then the chest and under the arm and on the head. Those are the kind of main points, aren't they?
That's right.
I mean, why is it so effective?
Why is it so powerful?
Yeah.
So, well, it's really interesting because, I mean, first of all, we say that working with the acupressure system switches off your stress response. It switches off your fight and flight response. So whether it's tapping that you're doing or acupuncture, acupressure, shiatsu, whatever it is that you're doing, we tend to sort of come out of those sessions feeling relaxed because the treatment has had an impact on our parasympathetic nervous system, which switches off the fight and flight response. So what we think is happening in tapping is that essentially we're talking about our problems, whatever they may be. And as we talk about our problems, it tends to elevate our stress response. So it tends to trigger our sympathetic nervous system to go into a stress state while we talk about our problems. Yeah. And then what the tapping does is it almost sort of sends a countering message. So talking about the problems elevates the stress response. Using the tapping switches off the stress response. So it's almost like we talk about how difficult the situation is, and then the tapping sort of says, no, it's okay. You're okay. Because even though you might be talking about a problem in the here and now, but the problem might have happened 30 years ago, you can still be talking about it now, and it will still trigger your fight and flight state, almost as if you're back there in that situation 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so whilst you're accessing that, whilst you're exposed to that through talking or through visualization, and then you use the tapping gives sort of the opposite message, and sort of, no, it's okay, you're safe.
From Ashley Mayer to April. And this one was recorded in my flat with Todd White, who also runs America's largest natural wine company. And I've spoken a few times on this podcast about natural wine and how you don't get hangovers from it so much and how it makes you feel great. But a lot of people were amazed at this particular podcast because of the reasons why. Todd outlined the reasons why you don't get so much of a hangover. I think, it's quite scientific. There's a lot of science and there's a lot of good sense behind this. There's a lot of basis in the claim that natural wine will give you less of a hangover.
Alcohol is toxic.
But we want to drink wine.
No, of course we want to drink wine, but we need dosage matters.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage. Right?
Yeah.
So virtually everything can kill us.
Yeah.
So, but alcohol toxicity is a real thing. People die every year from it. Now, you're not going to likely die from drinking 14% wine. I'm not suggesting that. But here's the other thing. When we consume more alcohol, this is what wakes us up in the middle of the night with dehydration. So when you're waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep because you think about all these other problems that you have, right? You get the monkey mind and you're trying to get back to sleep, right? Well, what's waking you up generally is dehydration or your response to sugar, which is also frequently present in commercial wines. Because, the palate, which started out as an American thing perhaps, but, now a global problem where the palate is just, so sweet.
Also, there's no label on a bottle of wine, so you can't. I knew that was going to set you off. But when there's not a label, you can't tell if there's sugar in it or not, right?
Precisely. Now, I don't know the laws in the UK, but I can tell you in the United States that the wine industry has spent tens of millions of dollars in lobbying money with the government to keep contents label off of wine.
Yeah,
I'm sure the same thing has happened here. There is no contents label.
No, there's nothing. There's those bottles over there.
No. Well, there's no contents. Well, I'm sure that the political structure benefits from contributions from the industry to keep contents label off of wine. It's the only major food product without transparency. Right? I have a real outrage around that, particularly since the U.S. government conspires with the wine industry in the United States.
Do they?
Absolutely.
Is the wine industry that big?
That absolutely. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Of course they are. The alcohol lobbying is one of the most powerful lobbies in the United States. So they have spent a lot of money and effort to keep contents label off. I'll tell you why there's not a label on it, because they don't want you to know what's in it.
Like, what would be the bad kind of stuff that could be in it?
Ammonia phosphates, heavy metals.
Oh. Ammonia doesn't sound so good.
Yeah, no, not so much. Defoaming agents. See, when you move wine from a tank to a barrel, or from tank to tank, as you must do in the winemaking process, it foams.
Oh.
Well, in the natural world, you just let the foam go away. That takes a while.
Yeah.
In a commercial, you just spray it with chemicals and make it go away. Right?
Am I right in saying that gelatin is in wine sometimes?
Gelatin, fish bladders, egg whites. There's all kinds of...
To preserve it?
Well, egg whites and fish bladders for fining, which is to create lipidity, which is clarity in wine. See, natural wines are unfiltered and unfined. That's the reason sometimes in our wines you'll see a little cloudiness or a little granular texture to it. That's what real wine looks like.
Right.
See, when you have wine that's super clarified, that's from a process, typically a mechanical process, filtering the wine. So natural wines are typically not filtered. Fining is used. Egg whites are used for fining. Fish bladders are used for fining. These are the two most common fining agents.
And if we had a label, we'd be able to see all this stuff.
Yeah, of course. Well, if you had a label, it would look just like a processed box of food, right? With the label, a bunch of chemicals that you don't know anything about. You don't know what they are. There are coloring agents. There are stabilizers. There are acid additions. There are all kinds of processes in these wines that this is ultimately what's making you feel bad. That and too high a dose of alcohol.
Todd White on Zestology, and from April to May in this review of the year, and the author of the biggest selling non-fiction book of all time, John Gray, was in town. The book, of course, is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and as always he had me quite shocked at times. I don't think I'm very easily shockable, but he had me quite shocked. He's a terrific chap, and it was great fun. We were lucky enough to spend the whole evening with him and go out for dinner afterwards, and what an interesting and charismatic man he is. He spent 9 years as a monk, meditating, a celibate monk. When you consider that he's now the world's biggest selling relationship author, that is quite interesting. And he was on Zestology in May.
You can't desire somebody unless you're feeling separate from them. You have to be aware of what you don't have. The word want is desire, right? To want means I don't have. So if you're having her all the time, you're not going to want her all the time. So I have her, I feel all this love, I have great sex, and then I go off to my work, I travel, I do my things, and I don't know that everybody has to go traveling. It's just that you have a life which is not dependent and sharing with your partner all the time. But you have your guy friends, very important for men. Women friends, very important for women. Best friends of the same sex is very important, I think, for everybody. Then you have your children, another activity. You've got your job, another activity. You've got your service. You've got your spiritual practice. I think spiritual practice, whatever your spiritual practice is so important. I meditate at least an hour a day. I've been doing this 45 years, This is my life. It's a foundation. People always say, how are you so successful? Why don't you have anxiety? I never run out of energy because I have no fears. Why don't I can be concerned about things, but no anxiety, no stress. Why? Because I have my practice I do every day.
When do you do it?
Pardon?
When do you do it?
Right, first thing in the morning.
So you wake
before
up.
I go to bed. Wake up.
What time do you wake up?
Not at the same time. I mean, like here, what time? I don't even know what time zone I'm
Yeah.
here. But when I got up today, I did at least an hour, maybe 2 hours.
And do you do it in bed, or do you get up and sit in a chair, or?
I just sit up in my bed.
Yeah.
Just sit in my bed.
That's what I do as well, actually. But I certainly don't do an hour. I do about 10, 15
that's
minutes.
Good. That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's a start.
It's a start.
I mean, you were actually a professional meditator.
I'm a professional meditator. For 9 years, that's all I did. I was celibate for 9 years. No sex and nothing. No masturbation for 9 years. And I was so celibate that the smell of semen came out from under my arms, because the semen goes up your body.
Come on. I just simply
No, that's
don't
a real
believe
celibate. Only a real celibate has semen sweat.
From May to June, and in June I focused on music and motivation with a friend of mine, John O'Grant, who he's one of the world's top DJs. He is part of Above and Beyond, who are massive DJs, so he's not like a kind of expert in the area of personal development, but I found what he had to say about music absolutely fascinating.
in music, there's different areas of life that maybe you're delivering a cold-hearted product, but with music, when it is art, you've got to be able to put yourself into it, I believe. Unless you're producing music for someone else, in which case that's a slightly different thing.
What do you mean putting yourself into it?
Well, it kind of has to be you, I think. I think if it's you, people like things that are real, I think, generally, rather than things that are kind of contrived or things that jumping on a bandwagon.
People think people might like.
Yeah.
It's not what you want.
You'd be amazed how many music producers and DJs will think about maybe a little bit too much about what people would like rather than what they like. And the chances are, unless you're extremely unique, the chances are if you really love something, someone else will. And I really believe in that as it's like what Apple do with their products.
That's a great little nugget for this podcast.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at what Apple did. They basically, there is a crossover of Apple historically into the art world. Their attention to detail with typefaces, the visual, the aesthetics of the designs. They would make a product that they believed in rather than going and doing loads of market research. And I think in the world of social media in music, there's a kind of tendency to kind of do almost market research on music, which is a bizarre concept. I mean, let's take the opposite end of the scale. Do you think the Sex Pistols went out and did market research? They just said what they thought, and I think that's really, really important in music, to say what you think musically. Yeah. And you'll be influenced by music that's around you, production ideas, and you kind of have to package up your music in a way that people can digest it. But the point is, at the core, it needs to be something authentic and real.
Well, in the last days of the year of 2017, it seems a long time ago, the festival season of June, and now moving on to July in this Zestology review of the year, Best Bits. And it seems a long time ago that it was quite warm enough to camp outside and hang out in shorts and a t-shirt all day long and interview Brett Moran, author and lovely chap. Brett, when he was talking about prison, Brett was in prison himself. When he was talking about prison, I thought was quite extraordinary, and I loved listening to him talk.
I'm covered in tattoos. I'm in prison for driving cars for armed robbers and all this.
Is that what it was you were in there?
I was in prison for drink driving stolen vehicles. No shot. When we was younger, we just had no rules. We was like menace to society. So we just basically, I got arrested. I got about 20 criminal records. I don't even know what they are right now.
Really?
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So they just threw me away basically.
Surprised they let you in here.
Yeah. Make sure you look after that phone, mate. And so I just think people see their problems or their weaknesses, whatever you want to call them, as a problem. So if somebody's got depression, it's I've got depression, they need to take tablets. I actually think now depression is a great opportunity to find the light. You could become really positive if you do the work. Drug addiction has been the best thing for me. I'm now addicted to being positive. I'm addicted to spreading love. I'm addicted to doing my yoga practice. So it's get to know yourself, realise we've all got some kind of thing, but how can I reframe it and turn it into a positive?
So back in prison, you're in there. How long were you in there for?
First time was about 8 months. Second time was about a year, I think.
Wow, so long stretches.
Yeah, so the first time I was on remand, so I didn't even know when I was going to be let out. So I had to do 6 to 8 months. Yeah, and then they finally let me out. I thought I was going to go and get sentenced, and they said, we're going to give you a second chance. And I was like, right, I'm changing my life. I didn't let anyone know I was meditating. I went to a Buddhist temple in Hemel Hempstead. Obviously didn't tell everyone about that. Got a drug counsellor. I was, talking about my issues and stuff. I was still, as soon as I came out of prison, mate, I was back on the drink, back on the drugs.
Really?
Yeah.
How quickly?
Well, that night. I got released and went out and got some coke.
Oh no.
Yeah, got on the drink. Again, it's all part of the path, right? You never. I don't think you're ever gonna. You're never even going to get into yoga and become a yogi on the first day. You enjoy it for a few weeks and you'll get bored of it and forget about it for a couple of weeks. It's like drugs. You're going to relapse 1,000 times. I relapsed and screwed up more times than the successes that I've got now, but they've created where I am. And by success, I just mean being happy and not taking drugs and being comfortable.
So then you not only relapsed there, you went back into prison again.
Went back to prison again. And again, another thing, what happened the first time in prison, I read this book on meditation and mindfulness, and as crazy as this sounds, and I'm not a religious person, I never really preach my beliefs, I just talk about what's worked for Brett. I put my hands together and prayed. So there's me, covered in tattoos, this racist little young hooligan, drug addict, put my hands together, I'm like, dear God, if there is something out there, help me. And I opened my eyes expecting this spiritual enlightenment, nothing. There's no bright white light, the door was still locked. I was expecting like Gandhi to release me from prison and we'd run off into the sunset, but it was bullshit. And then I thought I was going crazy. I thought, wow, you've really got some psychological problems because you believe in this thing in the sky. But I kid you not, that thing in the sky, or whether it's inside me, it's just, call it your intuition, just call it a nudge from the universe, whatever you want to label it, it's actually worked. And now I listen to that more than the ego, the voice, because we've all got that voice. I listen to that, and the first time that happened, I believe it happened because I had 6 months of solitude, and it was like a retreat.
From July to August, and a Strictly winner on Zestology, it was Camilla Dallarup who won Strictly with her partner Tom Chambers in 2009, and then she left the show. That was it. She just left and she went off and did her own thing, and she now lives in LA, but she was over here in August, and we hung out for a morning and we chatted about meditation. One of my favourite types of meditation, I don't know if it would be officially classed as meditation, but the kind of kirtan where you're kind of singing and chanting.
Yeah.
And I always liked singing.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I could really belt it out, but I found it so meditative. And I was so in the moment doing that.
Do you know why I think that is amazing? Because I work a lot with chakras, which is like the energy fields of the body. And the throat chakra is where people often carry stress.
Mm.
And so when you do singing or anything like that, you're letting that go, you're unlocking, and you're letting all this stress, and your immune system gets boosted. So you'll feel amazing probably after that and clear. So I can totally see why that will work.
Yeah, I did. It was really nice. And then after one of them, someone came up afterwards and said, "Thank you so much. You were singing so loudly. You inspired me to sing a bit louder."
Yes,
as well.
you see?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because we're finding our voices and speaking the truth of who we really are. And that's probably what happened to me when I felt like something was missing in my life when I left Strictly. I was like, what is my truth? Like, what do I really want to be speaking? Like, this conversation now just feels aligned with who I am and what I'm about. Where sometimes when I had to talk about whatever, other fluffy thing, maybe that just wasn't for really what I wanted to be doing at that time in my life. That was okay for 25 years. It's just that we evolve. And I have a whole chapter on it's okay to evolve. And it's okay to start over. Because I think I was an expert too. I write about this, having an ego and letting that kind of tackling the ego and knowing that I was not going to be an expert for a while. I was going to be a novice, and I was going to have to ask people for help, and I was kind of going to just be, climbing the ladder to knowledge. And that was actually really refreshing when I allowed myself to do that. And I didn't tell people what I did. I didn't go, oh, but this is what I used to do. I was like, I promised myself not to keep doing that.
But did your ego in some way miss not just the attention, but that satisfaction that you get from doing something at an expert level?
No, because I was so ready to learn and to absorb. I think I was tired from giving, from being the one doing, and I was ready to be the one soaking up. And it just felt good. But yeah, there was moments probably where I thought, I wish. Why did I actually leave that behind? Because I was an expert, and now this is just hard work.
Yeah, and you certainly probably left more money behind.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, life was very comfortable. It was a very lucrative life, but if you're not happy inside, who cares?
In September, I chatted to a friend of the show, someone who's been on quite a few times, Celeste Pereira. Celeste is since she's been on Zestology, she's got way bigger. She's got a huge Instagram following now, and I think it's fair to say she's an international yoga teacher. And when we started, we did a podcast on hair loss, and initially I was thinking, this might actually be quite a niche subject for Zestology, because either you're worried about hair loss or you're not. And then I realised that actually this was for anybody that might be interested in a more natural way of doing things. Celeste tried all the kind of conventional routes and it didn't work. And as soon as she went to people who were kind of more focused on a holistic way of healing, it did work. And the story was really interesting along the way.
A long time ago that I just started noticing that my hair was falling out a lot and maybe getting a bit thinner. And I just thought, okay, so I'm a very proactive person. So whenever something happens that I'm not totally satisfied with, I will just start making changes. So I did lots of research about what promotes hair growth or what diet is best for more protein in your body. And I really started making a lot of positive changes.
And when you say the hair, was it falling out, or did it look thinner, or what?
Yeah, a bit of both. I would say that it was thinning at the top, and that's obviously like the nerve-wracking thing of you like noticing your hair's getting thinner. When you're like, oh my God, am I going bald? And every
no
time,
one wants that. Girls don't want that. Guys don't want that.
And then every time you brush your hair, so much hair comes out. Super stressful.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So how did you feel when that was happening?
Oh, of course, you feel awful, right? But then I was really good at styling my hair, so not a lot of people knew it was happening, or maybe they did know and they're just being polite. I don't know.
Well, I didn't notice, and then you told me about it, and then I looked, obviously, when you told me, and I could see that it looked slightly thinner than perhaps it should, but it still didn't look. I mean, you weren't bald, were you?
No, I wasn't bald, and
No.
I think that possibly all the positive steps I was taking was having some impact, but still my hair was getting thinner over time. Maybe slower, maybe I'd slowed it down a bit, but it was still happening.
So you started doing all the research?
Yeah, I started doing a lot of research, but because it wasn't really working in terms of the dietary changes I was making, I went to so many different doctors. I just started really putting a lot of effort into finding different professionals that could help. And I ended up going to, this is I think a very important thing to share with your listeners, is I went to those hair loss clinics that you see advertised on the tube.
Yeah.
I went to a few. And it was
more than one?
Yeah, I went to like 2 or 3. And it was crazy because they really use scare tactics. So what you do is you walk in and they put this little thing in your hair, which is a camera, and it blows up the size of your hair follicles on this big screen TV.
Oh.
So you're looking at your own head and they're like, oh, notice here on the scalp by your crown how thin your hair is, and then they move down to where your ears are and look how thick the hair is there. So you definitely have female pattern hair loss. And I'm like absolutely crapping my pants at this point. You can imagine.
So that's part of the way to reel you in.
Yeah, because then what they do is then a doctor comes in. This is just a consultant who does this. Then a little doctor walks in and he starts saying, oh, this is definitely genetic. There's nothing we can do about this. Then obviously now you're thinking, oh my God, there's no solution. All the healthy diet stuff I've been doing has been a waste of time. And then they start giving you this magical spray called minoxidil. And they're like, you must use this spray. This spray will help your hair grow back. So you're in a state of fear, so you make a purchase of a tiny bottle worth £50. You pay £50 for this bottle. And I went home and I started spraying it. And they said, and your second option when minoxidil doesn't work is hair transplant surgery, which is like £10,000.
What is minoxidil? It doesn't sound like it's very nice.
No, so I started
it's not
using
natural,
it. No, completely. And so I started using it pretty much just out of fear. And I started noticing that my scalp was very itchy. It would burn. Hair did start growing. But then when it started burning and feeling itchy, I thought, I'm the kind of person who hates using chemicals. I use natural toothpaste, natural soaps, natural makeup. Everything's natural. And I'm using minoxidil on my hair like it just didn't feel right.
So then what happened?
Okay, so this is this important thing that I want to share is that through all my travels and all my journeys and really being proactive about looking to find out the right person that could help, I discovered a functional medical doctor. And what she did was she analyzed my stool and sent me off for blood tests. And interestingly, all my blood tests were in normal range. And all the doctors, the allopathic doctors, were saying I was crazy, there's nothing wrong with me, it's genetic. But she also, in addition to the blood tests, analyzed my stool, and she came up with 3 main things that was wrong with me. So everyone has their own thing, right? I don't want to say that this is what everyone's going through, but these 3 things had enough of an impact that caused my hair loss. The first was I had a very high level of a bacteria called Klebsiella in my gut, which was eating up all my nutrients. The second thing was I was very allergic to gluten, which meant that when I ate it, it caused inflammation in my gut. And again, that stopped absorption of nutrients. And the third thing was... You can edit this, right?
I'm not going to edit it now, you said that.
No, go on. Hang on. First thing was Klebsiella, the second thing was and the third thing was my pancreas wasn't producing enough enzymes to break down food.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
And
just
again,
earlier.
and again to get enough nutrients out of my food so that I can have hair, because your body will always protect your vital organs.
Right. So the body's sending the nutrients to the vital organs and not to the hair where it's not vital?
Exactly.
Right.
But of course, that's a sign that something's wrong. So you have to listen to your body and you have to try and figure out solutions.
Well, that was Celeste Pereira. And on to October now, and regular listeners to Zestology will know that one of the themes of this year is me trying out a more high-fat, low-carb diet, which it was, I was fairly low-carb anyway, but ketosis really does involve not very many carbs on a daily basis. And my friend Tim was lucky enough to meet pretty much the world's biggest expert in ketosis, Dominic D'Agostino, at a conference in New Orleans. And he said, have you heard about Zestology podcast? To which I think Dom pretty much said no. But now he does know about it, because Tim managed to introduce us, and Dom was such a great chap, really lovely man, and came on Zestology, loves talking about ketosis and the therapeutic impact that this particular diet can have. It's the most Googled diet of 2017, by the way, so whilst you munch on your mince pies over the next 3 weeks, you might be checking this out again on the 1st of January, and this is a little taster of what he had to say.
Pre-keto, I was always bloated and gassy and then stuffing my face a couple hours later. I just thought you had to do that for athletic performance, for gaining muscle, to gain weight. If you do have a fast metabolism, I've always had a pretty fast metabolism, and I thought I just needed to do that. But with keto, it's really easy, because the volume of food is less, and you don't get hungry, and it kind of, it really energizes me throughout the day.
Now, where do you stand on... I've been doing this for about 4 months, and I must admit, the first month I found it really hard. And to be honest, I never even thought I wanted to do it, but I decided to try it for the digestion, and I must admit it's had a massive difference. But the first month, it is tough at first, isn't it? I just felt tired, and I'd say, if anything, my digestion got slightly worse as my body was adapting to it. If only you could kind of get away without having that first month, it'd be even really better. But now I'm into it. It seems quite easy, but it's hard to get into it for people, I think.
Yeah, it is. And like you point out, a lot of people's energy may take a dip in the beginning. They may I didn't get it, but a lot of people get what they call the keto flu.
Yeah.
And you got to realize, if your brain is used to running on sugar, glucose as its primary energy source from carbohydrates, and you're depriving your body of that major energy source, your body can make glucose through gluconeogenesis, but it's going to be getting less, and it's not going to get those spikes in glucose that kind of make your brain happy and kind of stimulate insulin and do some other things. When you're on a ketogenic diet, those spikes are virtually eliminated, and your brain becomes hungry for glucose, which puts you in a bad mood. And until your body starts making ketones sufficiently and upregulating the transporters to ketones to help them get into your brain at sufficient levels, and also boosting what we call ketolytic enzymes, so the proteins and enzymes inside the cell that actually enhances the bioenergetics of the cell, which actually allow the cell to use the ketones for energy. And that's a process that happens not in 24, 48 hours. It happens over weeks to months. So I didn't really get into my stride, I would say, until like 3 or 4 months into following this diet. Of course, there's a learning curve to the diet, so I probably wasn't doing it well. So once I realized that I could add a little bit of MCT oil and do it to a point where I can tolerate it, and then my ketones would get higher, and I realized what foods work for me. High dairy foods didn't work for me, and then for many people, that's the basis of the keto. It's tons of dairy fat, and I realized that I had to kind of reduce my dairy fat and replace the heavy cream with like coconut cream and some other things. So it was a number of things that I had a learning curve with that allowed me to kind of thrive on the diet instead of just kind of doing it to see what's it like to do the diet. I became curious because the basis of my research was on studying the effects of it, so I wanted to actually experience it myself.
In November, I had Dave Asprey on Zestology. I was lucky enough to go to LA, as I've already said, and interviewed Dave Asprey, and he is probably the world's most famous biohacker, which is kind of making little tweaks to your diet and lifestyle and environment and nutrition to perform optimally. And we got chatting about stem cells, and it turns out that Dave Asprey's had injections of stem cells in some very strange places.
So yeah, they put them in my face, my hair. They did them intravenously. I'm the second person to have my stem cells injected into my brain, prophylactically.
Into your brain?
Yeah. So they do it in the cerebral spinal fluid, so you can get them right there, and it works. Like, this is real. And yes, I had them injected in my penis and pretty much everywhere that's possible. And you want to be younger. You want to be younger everywhere. A lot of people ask, why would you want to live to 180? Because the vision of being old is that you're going to be infirm, you're going to have Alzheimer's disease, you'll have paper-thin skin, and you just won't like your life. And that is not my goal. My goal is to, when I'm 180, to look about like I do now. And I have no idea if I'm going to be able to look like this when I'm that old or not, but I'm absolutely willing to work to live to 180 and to die trying, because we're all going to die anyway. I just want to feel amazing until it happens, and I sure hope it happens in a very long time from now. And why wouldn't we make the small changes in our lives, in our environments now, to prevent the damage, so that even if we die at a normal age, that we have an amazing life until then? That's the worst case with what I'm doing. And the best case is I'm going to break some records. I'm okay with either one.
Well, that's the important thing, isn't it? The quality of life.
Yeah.
Actually, whether you're 40, 50, 60 or whatever, as long as you're feeling good, that really is the most important thing.
Yeah, feeling good and having a working brain. And all of us are afraid of that. And what happens in the research from Headstrong, half of people under age 40 have what's called early onset mitochondrial dysfunction. Big words. What that means is that the power plants in your cells, the things that make the energy, that gives you your willpower, that gives you your zest for life, well, they aren't making as much energy as they're supposed to. So half of people under 40 are old, and everyone over 40 has mitochondrial dysfunction. They just call it aging. It is not necessary. We know about the system now, and you can hack it. And that's why I wrote my last book. And that's the stuff I've been doing to make myself look the way I look now.
And from November to December, and only last week I had Julia Immonen on Zestology, who rode the Atlantic. Incredible story. She's a friend of mine. She works at Sky Sports with me, and just decided one day to row the Atlantic. And along the way, seriously got outside her comfort zone.
I think by the end of it, literally it was the compass and the GPS that were the only things working. So probably one of the most significant things that you don't want to break is your water maker. So you have a system, a machine that desalinates the seawater, and you really don't want that to break. And of course that hatch flooded and caught fire, or the water maker caught fire and blew up. So it meant that we had a reserve, which was a hand pump. So it meant that we had to hand pump water round the clock for a month, because it broke on day 14. So, and if we had any help from, there was a support boat amongst the whole race, but we didn't see them because all the boys were having problems. Us girls just had to man up and get on with it. But it just meant that we were going for these 2 world records, and if we had any assistance from any other boat, we wouldn't have got the world record. So we really didn't want to have help. So hand pumping water, everything literally broke in the middle of the night. So I remember our auto helm, which steers the rudder, broke, and that meant we had to steer the rudder with our foot whilst rowing, and waves lashing on you. I mean, just going to bed meaning a tiny single coffin, bed kind really. Of coffin, yeah. And but it was just, it was I always say it was the hardest but the best thing I've ever done. I feel so privileged to have gone through those challenges, actually, because had it been easy, I wouldn't have known who this kind of new Julia is.
Well, that is it for my Zestology review of the year, and that is it for the Zestology year as well. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I do appreciate you listening. I want to say thank you to all the guests that I've had on, and a couple of other thank yous actually while I'm about it. I want to say thank you to Emmy, who has been so helpful with scheduling all the podcasts and the blogs that we put out. I want to say thank you to Alison, who's helped set up some awesome guests over the last few months, and of course thank you to Steve, who edits the podcasts and always does an excellent job. And if you want to check out Steve, then you can Google Steve Campen Creative Radio and you'll find him, and he always does a great job. Well, yeah, that's it for 2017. Have a lively and wonderful Christmas and festive period. Happy holidays. And I'll be back on the 1st of January. I've decided I really want to help you make 2018 go with a bang. If that's what you decide to do on New Year's Day or the 2nd or the 3rd and you want a little dollop of inspiration, I think you'll enjoy the first podcast of 2018. Also, a little teaser for you. 2 big interviews coming at the start of 2018. Joe Wicks, the body coach, one of the most famous men alive as far as I can tell. And Joe Wicks, I've already been to meet him, as you might have seen on my Instagram, and he was a really lovely guy, and that is coming at some point in 2018, in the next few weeks. And also top relationship expert Esther Perel as well. She is fantastic. Felt like a half-hour therapy session interviewing her, so that's on the way as well. So I'm excited about 2018. I'm also going to be on my travels for part of it at the start of the year, so you'll hear some podcasts from around and about the place. And all that remains for me to say is thank you for listening to Zestology this year. Have a great time off, Christmas and New Year, and I'll see you in 2018.